Welcome to the Clear to Send podcast, a podcast about wireless engineering, where we educate you on Wi-Fi technology, talk about design tips, troubleshooting, interviews, and the tools. Here are your hosts, Rowell and François.
Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of the Clear to Send podcast. I'm here with François. Both of us are actually here together in Santa Clara. We're outside in Santa Row. If you guys haven't been, it's a beautiful location. It's up and coming, I think. And I just picked up François from the Apple Store because he had the most unfortunate thing where your MacBook broke on the way here, right?
Yeah, so I was, in the plane on my way here, typing on my keyboard, and then all of a sudden it stopped working. So my keyboard and my tripod stopped working. And so actually when I landed, he came and he brought me to the Apple Store, and then they tried to fix it. They couldn't fix it. They pretty much kidnapped my MacBook for the entire, time I was here for Mobility Field Day. They managed to fix it. So they replaced the keyboard, the entire top of the laptop, and they fixed it. So it works now, and they didn't erase all of the data I had on my laptop. So I'm really happy about that. So just some time before I leave town.
Yeah, so you were without a laptop for Mobility Field Day 4, but that's okay. You had an iPad, so you were able to write things or type things out. But we wanted to get your thoughts and your experience as a first-time delegate at Mobility Field Day or Tech Field Day as a whole, your first event. What did you think overall about the presenters, like how the whole process went down and the information that you received? Do you think it's better than how we usually would receive this information?
So, I've been watching the Mobility Field Day and even the Wireless Field Day before that for a long time now. So I was familiar with the concept and how everything is running. So, but being a delegate is actually very nice. Everything is organized for you. You don't have to do anything. They bring you places and they have everything ready for you. All you have to do is show up, listen to the presentations, and then exchange with the presenters, ask questions, and then share what you think on social medias and all of that. So it's a very good, very nice experience. And you were with other delegates, right, that have their own views and expertise on different things. So it's nice to bring different people to around the table and talk to the different vendors. Obviously, each people will have their own interests, so they will kind of ask questions related to their interest, and it's nice to have that variety of delegates with really good Wi-Fi expertise in our case. So it was a very good experience. When we did the Just a Tech event for Cisco earlier this year, it was kind of like the same idea. It's the only frustrating thing for me, I guess, as a delegate is everything is running on a clock. So when the hour is down, the hour is down. Even if you have more questions and stuff, you kind of you have to stop, which is understandable because the vendors pay per hour. So the guys running the Mobility Field, they have to be strict about it. But other than that, I mean, the presenters, they know we're going to have questions, so they usually keep a lot of time for, us asking questions. Some vendors even have like Q&A sessions where they just reserve time for us to ask questions. And they know that, they're going to have to reserve some time for that. So it was a very good experience. And you also get to network with the other delegate. In between the events, they also had evening dinner and little activities organized for us, so you can have fun and just exchange with other people in the industry. So it was very, very good experience for me.
Yeah, so you got to sit in front of presenters who are both they know the product very well, but they're also very technical, right? So you're able to ask really tough questions and get hopefully good responses. I mean, as a previous delegate, I've heard some questions kind of go around, but like you said, there is a strict timeline, and it's good that they're actually this time around focusing a lot more with the Q&A, because without that, as a viewer, like when I was watching some of the videos, I might have a question and then you might not be able to ask it, right? Because that's the whole point in these types of presentations. And in between them, you go from one presentation to another presentation, and then you're very close with the other delegates. Like, what would you think is the best benefit with networking with the other delegates? Because have you met all of them? Have you maybe you've only met them through social media? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think I only met a couple of them because we've been around to the conferences and you can see the people again. But you're right. It's very nice to have this off time, and sometimes you can just continue talking about the topics that we just heard about for the hour or two. So it's nice. You can get different perspective, and you can even exchange on other topics. Talk about some projects you're working on, business things, business related things, and or you could just share stories, funny stories. So it's very nice.
With the presenters, you do get a chance to be very close to the presenter. So I imagine maybe before or after the session, you have a moment to ask other questions or exchange business cards. Is that the case in these types of events where you're going to be asking them, hey, can I hit you up later with a conversation that I wanted to ask, a topic I wanted to ask, but we just didn't have enough time?
Yes. So it's a very close. You're pretty much in the meeting room with the presenter, so you can approach them, you can talk to them before, after. You actually have a little bit of time. This time around, like we either had like breakfast or lunch before and after, so like an hour where we could just talk to the people, exchange, network with the with the vendor staff. So you could totally do that. And if you need more time, for us, we could just reach out and then have them on a podcast, interview them on a specific topic, and they usually know what they're talking about, right? They know, the vendors, when they present at this type of event, they know that they might be challenged by some of the industry experts, so they usually bring their best people up front, so they know how to respond and all of that. So you get access to really nice people, and that usually play different roles in the industry on top of working for a specific vendor. For instance, this morning we're at Aruba and we talked to Chuck, which is also involved in working on releasing the 6 gig band for everyone in the US with the FCC. And then we talked with Dan, which works with the Wi-Fi Alliance and all the security certifications. So you can also get that access to these type of persons, and maybe try to ask questions or get their contact for later questions, I guess. Yeah.
So why don't we go through a recap of what happened throughout Mobility Field Day 4. We are going to do separate episodes for each vendor because I think it's worth diving into it a little bit more deeply. Plus, we kind of give everyone a chance to watch those videos. It gives me a chance to watch every single video. I didn't watch every one that was available. But why don't we start off with, and I'm going to ask you later, okay, who your favorite presentation was, but let's start off with Mist as a good example. What do you think about Mist, their presentation, and what they're coming out with?
Yeah, so Mist was actually the first one, and it was pretty good. When they had breakfast for us really early in the morning, and we started right off the bat. And Mist, they talked about obviously AI, machine learning, but for them, it's not just a buzzword. It's they actually using it for troubleshooting purposes, and they're in their journey of having what they call the self-driving network, right? It's kind of like the electric cars. At one point, we want the car to just drive for us. So their idea is at one point we'll have the network, running on its own, detecting problems, solving the problems, and all of that. So it was very interesting, and they actually showed us some stats from the dashboard, from all the data they collect, and they explained why they were able to get to the point which they are right now. So they were, just to give you guys a quick update, they were just telling us that they're using algorithm nowadays that allow us to to have a 95% success rate on their anomaly detection. And then on top of that, they have their Marvis guy. It's not a guy, but the Marvis algorithm, which is pretty much their assistant in their dashboard. And then they were collecting stats from Marvis, and they're saying that 50% of the time their Marvis system was able to properly identify a problem, right? So, and that's kind of like the idea. Like in the future, the system will detect the problem for us, and then it will implement the resolution. Okay, so that's kind of like where they're at right now. They have some problems that they're fixing right now, and they can ask the user, "Do you want us to do that automatically?" And they would fix it for you automatically. So they would reconfigure, or repatch, the access point for you. And then as they improve their algorithm, they're probably going to release more and more advanced feature in that regards. Yeah.
So when it comes to then using artificial intelligence, that's what Marvis is the artificial intelligence portion, where you can pop in a question into the dashboard and Marvis will go and figure that out for you, right? It's kind of like your Alexa at home. You go have it query things for you and it gives you a result. But it is interesting that they're moving to the point where you can ask Marvis this, and then Marvis can turn around and say, "Here's the problem. Can I fix it for you? Yes or no?" And then you say yes, and it'll do it for you. I think that's a very good step forward. I haven't seen that actually happen in the real world. I would really like to see how that works, what kind of issues it's detecting. What about did they talk about the machine learning part? Like, what would that... Like, I always have a hard time grasping what machine learning actually is, and I think Mist might be the best to help us understand how it can be used.
Yeah, I think they're using the machine learning to become more to get better results at detecting the anomalies, and I think that's what they're using to get the 95%. And they told us they were using this new algorithm that's using like neuroscience, which is like a more advanced, and they told us like we're able to use those type of algorithm today because of the the compute power, and I'm guessing the machine learning as well, and the amount of data that you collect over time. And they also told us that for every client they will just try to learn what's going on in the network, and then what they do is they look at the previous 2 months, what happened in the network in the previous 2 months, and they predict what the next hour will be, right? And if the next hour is not exactly what they anticipated to be, then they start to flag anomalies and stuff like that.
What about hardware? Are they coming out with their new Wi-Fi 6 AP?
Yeah, so they also talked about the new Wi-Fi 6 access point, and they did a live demo. So that was actually pretty cool, and that's the only vendor that did that. So I was pretty pleased with that. So when we arrived in the room, they actually had Ekahau with a Spectrum View, and they had two clients sharing their 20 megahertz channel, so you could clearly see OFDMA in action. And then I was with Dave Benham, and we each had a Wi-Fi 6 device. And then Rob and Wes from Mist, they came to us. They gave us the SSID. We connected. We started to generate traffic. They actually generated IPF traffic, so we could see the spectrum. So that was pretty cool. If you go on Twitter, you could probably see, because I shared some of that. And then Wes Purvis from Mist, he talked about the Wi-Fi 6 access point, what they're doing, the OFDMA, and he told us, which frame to look at if we wanted to understand if OFDMA was used. So they talked a little bit about it. It wasn't very deep conversation, but they did talk a little bit about it. On the Wi-Fi 6 subject, Fortinet also talked about their new Wi-Fi 6 access point. That's actually something I missed. I didn't know they had Wi-Fi 6 access point, but they released them a couple months ago. It kind of went under the radar. But they do have two Wi-Fi 6 access point, and they have 3 radios in it. So they could actually do dual 5 gig plus 2.4. So yeah, so they have different modes. You can do one 5 gig, one 2.4, one like sensor mode, or you can do dual 5 gig, one sensor mode, or you could do dual 5 gig and one 2.4. So they have 3 radios. Only 2 of them are Wi-Fi 6, and the other one is AC. But I thought it was pretty cool. And then Wi-Fi 6, Cisco talked about the Wi-Fi 6 access point, but they didn't release any new access points. So that's the one we can currently know about, the 9115, 9117, and 9120. And then Aruba talked about their Wi-Fi 6 access point, and they actually have 3 models right now, and they're releasing a 4th one, which is more the entry level. It's going to be the 500 series, and it's going to come out before the end of the year. They said 4th quarter. So that was pretty much it about Wi-Fi 6. I was actually expecting to hear a little bit more about Wi-Fi 6, but I feel like for vendors it's a past, and they're already moving on to the next thing. So we heard more about AI, machine learning from different vendors, and we heard about IoT. If you want to talk about that a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, we can touch upon IoT, but to touch upon the Wi-Fi 6, I can definitely see why it's not a big focus, right? Because everyone now has a Wi-Fi 6 AP. They're going to be focused on getting those features enabled. It's a matter of testing it now and waiting for more clients to appear. And then the secret sauce is just going to be in the software. So I'd be curious on the Mist side can it tell you how much more efficient the wireless network is now that you've got Wi-Fi 6 enabled, and how many are transitioning to Wi-Fi 6?
And also, for the Wi-Fi 6 space, like they pretty much have the same chipset, and then they have some flexibility on top of that. But what the chipset manufacturer is saying is that you have the hardware capable chipset, but not all the firmware is ready. So they kind of like tied with the chipset manufacturer as well in terms of what firmware they deliver as well.
Yeah, that's an important thing to understand with Wi-Fi 6 is the chipset itself is capable, but we're just not quite there with software yet. So if there's one vendor that isn't supporting something like Uplink, OFDMA, for example, that's probably common in many other vendors because they're using the same chipset. With Fortinet, I like the idea of the 3 radios, and that's something I would expect out of Fortinet because that 3rd radio could be used for security purposes, but also being able to turn it on as another radio, because if you've got a dense deployment, do you need every single AP to have that 3rd radio enabled to be a security sensor type of device? Maybe just enable some of those to serve more clients, so then now you have more capacity. And then being able to use that for Wi-Fi 6, like 2 dual 5 gig Wi-Fi 6 radios is going to be interesting. Well, 3 really, because you'll have the 2.4. I'm
Wi-Fi 6 though.
Well, you'd be able to use a 2.4 and still get some more capacity, right? And then for Wi-Fi 6 and the dual 5 gig, it's just you're already getting efficiencies with Wi-Fi 6, and now you're going to add more capacity with another radio. I'm curious how that transition goes between the radios. Hopefully, it actually works very well. I'm also assuming it's going to require 802.11v, K, features that not every single device has enabled on their phones.
So I guess we can talk more about that when we do like a deep dive on Fortinet, because I think Dave actually asked the question, or was it Sam? I forgot, or Jake. But they were talking about different antennas per radio. You know how Cisco, when they do their dual 5 gig, they have different antenna pattern. So they has that question, but I'm keeping the answer for the episode. Teasing.
Yeah, you're talking about the antenna isolation and how you try to stay within the laws of physics there. And then I guess IoT. So we'll breeze right through Wi-Fi 6 because I think we've talked a lot about that even in previous episodes. IoT with the vendors trying to focus on how we can accommodate IoT and all the different vendors and manufacturers out there trying to service IoT devices. We all have them in our networks. They're everywhere, but now we need solutions to kind of wrangle that all together, right? So what's the trend that you saw with IoT there at Mobility Field Day?
Yeah, IoT was actually very interesting, and I wasn't really expecting that much talk around IoT. But I'm actually happy we talked about it because, like you said, it's coming to the enterprise space. Personally, I haven't had a client ask me, can you on top of the Wi-Fi devices, can you make sure I can connect my Zigbee, doorbell, whatever, or lock? I've never had that use case yet, but I hear people talking about more and more IoT devices in the enterprise space. So we clearly need a solution for that. So the vendors talked about IoT, and the problem they were outlining was the fact that to handle all of your IoT devices today, you kind of have to install a different hub, like a Zigbee hub, or another gateway, another infrastructure, novel and network. And they were trying to find solutions where we could just leverage the infrastructure we already have, so the Wi-Fi access points, to embed all these IoT gateways, so we could have the access points handling the Wi-Fi and also handling the Zigbee and the Bluetooth and the other IoT technology that we use today. So it was quite interesting. Cisco talked about it on the first day, and they have this whole solution where you can install a module to an access point that would act as a Zigbee gateway. Or they talked about the electronic shelving system label. I forgot the exact name, but some stores now have electronic label where you have the price of the product on it's like a paper ink type of label, and you can change it through the system. But it communicates on different radio space, like 900 megahertz or different frequencies. So you kind of need another piece of hardware to have those ticketing system communicating with your infrastructure, so that you could just, with the Cisco access point, you could just connect a module that would interact with those labels and then allow you to, just have that infrastructure in place to update your labels. That was just one example, but in the future we could imagine having Zigbee. I know they start to install, especially in new buildings, a whole bunch of IoT devices on 2.4, right? So it would be nice if we can just manage all of them using our Wi-Fi infrastructure. And then what I would hope, I've never seen it from the management side, but what I would hope to see is like on the dashboard, like one dashboard for everything. So you could see on the dashboard your Wi-Fi clients and then your Zigbee clients, and then maybe you can set up policies in between the two, like for you in your case, like for education purposes, you could have like per classroom policies, or per room, like dorm room. If a student wants to come in with their brand new VR system or whatever, they could have their own policy, and then maybe they could manage them. So IoT is very interesting. It feels like it's very early, but it's nice that the vendors are trying to think about it and consolidating, all the stuff we have out there.
It's an interesting use case because, like you said, in higher ed where I'm at, we do have other devices that manage Zigbee units, like door locks, for example, which are not. It doesn't even fall under our team. It's not infrastructure that we support, but there are access points for that purpose. So there are different access points that are not Cisco. And I think that's where it would make sense to combine that infrastructure, that hardware into one unit, not have to spend as much more on hardware, more ports that you got to occupy for PoE purposes. Because that's what I have to do is I configure a port for this specific AP that manages door locks. And that just takes up another port on the switch. So I could see the idea with the module. I just don't know how quickly people will move to that, right? And try to think about how these modules will work with these APs. Some people don't have APs with the module capabilities, so they'd have to replace the APs as an example. And I've been in environments where they do have APs with that capability, but they just didn't go with the module for whatever reason. So maybe now's the time to really work on that software side of things, being able to create, like you said, the policies, the permissions, the role-based access. So that way you don't have someone logging into your wireless controller system to just do some sort of Zigbee policies. Do you think that's where it's headed, or is it kind of far off, or maybe they're not quite ready?
I'm not sure if they quite ready on the policy side of things. I haven't seen a lot of things. But to answer your hardware question, Aruba, what they did for their previous generation of APs, like before Wi-Fi 6, is that they have like a little USB module, for instance, for Zigbee support. So how you have a USB on each AP, you just connect that module to the USB, and then boom, you now have a Zigbee radio to your access point. And so you don't necessarily need to replace all the access points, right? You just have to add this little module. If you have older access points, at one point you're gonna have to replace them, right? That's just the way it works. But I think vendors, they're trying to find solutions for those cases. Something that was very interesting also when we talked about IoT is Cisco was showing us the prediction of the number of devices and how they will grow, in the next few years. And we're gonna have more and more Zigbee devices, and they also talked about Thread, which is another IoT technology. I didn't know about it, but Thread allow you to use, from what I understood, Thread allows you to use IPv6 addresses. So I'm guessing better connection or interconnection with our networks, and in the number of devices we're gonna have in the coming years, like the number of Wi-Fi devices, I was like all up to the roof. So like Wi-Fi is not gonna go anywhere, and it's still gonna be used for some IoT applications, along with Zigbee and Thread and those Bluetooth. We forgot Bluetooth, but Bluetooth 5.0 is now the technology they put in their access points, and it's there to stay, depending on the application. So I thought that was interesting to see that, even though we see all these IoT technologies, Wi-Fi will still be the main technology used.
So on that topic then, what about 5G? Did anyone at Mobility Field Day mention 5G and how that's going to stack up against Wi-Fi? Because these numbers are really insane. Wi-Fi is going to be the main point of connectivity. But on the other side of this, we're seeing from other vendors saying 5G is going to be the Wi-Fi killer. It's going to be the main point of connectivity. And I do see it being a good connection option for IoT devices, especially that are out in, outdoors where there might not be any outdoor Wi-Fi. That could be a good use case. What have you heard at Mobility Field Day about 5G?
We didn't talk about 5. No, I'm kidding. Man, I think this is the first Mobility Field Day where we talk, a lot about cellular technologies and, cellular versus Wi-Fi, and how can you have seamless roaming between cellular and Wi-Fi. And we actually had, to answer your question, we had a full Q&A session that Tom was monitoring on, Wi-Fi versus 5G, and will 5G kill Wi-Fi and all of that. So if you guys are interested, you can go and watch it. But it was actually very interesting to see those conversations, because all the delegates were pretty much Wi-Fi people, right? And, as we move on, we can see that both the Wi-Fi and the 5G technology, they kind of converging, right? The Wi-Fi is speaking OFDMA from LTE, and then the 5G is picking up, MIMO and all these, Wi-Fi technologies. It's not really Wi-Fi, but we already have them on the Wi-Fi side, and so it's kind of like the both technologies have converging, but at the same time, cellular people are very pushing 5G, and then on our side, we're more like Wi-Fi is not going anywhere for now. So it was actually an interesting conversation. I think the people, the delegates, they were just agreeing that obviously 5G is not going to kill Wi-Fi. 5G is kind of driven from the carrier, and the carrier, they trying to find a way to monetize it's like a shock of culture. I think Jake was talking about that, and I totally agree with him. It's a shock of culture. The operators are trying to squeeze any money they can out of the technology on the Wi-Fi side.
Yeah.
So on the Wi-Fi side, we don't really have that culture. We just want to provide good connectivity to our users in the enterprise space, and we don't really try to monetize, the Wi-Fi network. But yeah, we talked a lot about it, and something we talked a lot about is the handover or roaming, depending on which word you live in, right? different vocabs. We're gonna have to get used to that, because depending on if you're on the Wi-Fi side or on the cellular side, you have different vocabulary for the exact same thing. But we talked about the roaming between cellular and Wi-Fi, and we talked about handover, and it was actually quite interesting because Cisco they did a full-on presentation of open roaming, right? We did do an episode on open roaming with Jerome, and open roaming is pretty much something that Cisco is pushing, and it's it's automatic way for our phones to pretty much roam between cellular and Wi-Fi, behind with us not even knowing about it, in a secure way. So we can just pop up somewhere, connect to the Wi-Fi, and our phone will automatically authenticate towards the identity provider. I think I'm using the proper vocab here. Our phone we identify to an identity provider, and it will be connected to the Wi-Fi without having to select an SSID and all of that. They're calling it the new Passpoint, right? We talked about Passpoint 11U or Hotspot 2.0, depending on how you call it. So it's kind of like they call it the new Passpoint, and they're trying to push that. And they did a presentation on that. And then the next day we go to Aruba, and they talk about Passpoint, and they have this whole presentation on Passpoint and on how Passpoint is the future. So for me it was kind of funny. I would love if they would just both go in the same direction, right? And I think it's possible. They're both part of the WBA, right? The Wireless Broadband Alliance. They both talked about the WBA, right? So I'm guessing they're sometimes in the same room, right? So I think they need to come up with something they agree on, and they can push forward so the industry can move in that direction. And they're pretty much saying that, if they implement those systems, open roaming, Passpoint, at a large scale, it could solve our poor cellular in-building coverage, right? So instead of having cellular operators coming into hospitals and universities and deploying those DAS systems, distributed antenna systems, you would just rely on the Wi-Fi infrastructure and do like a Passpoint handover or open roaming, and people will connect to the Wi-Fi, leverage the Wi-Fi connection inside the building, and that would pretty much terminate the need for a DAS environment. So I didn't really answer your question on 5G, but
but you made a good transition into open roaming and Passpoint. And the way that I see it working out is, do you remember the Blu-ray and HD DVD war? This is what it looks like, right? It's going to be Passpoint or open roaming, I think, and I'm gonna lean towards Passpoint on this one, because I feel like the open roaming is a little too proprietary, and I don't think anyone's talked about the licensing and how that works. How does this? Who gets billed for what? With which features? You have all these identities, so are the identity providers, like, you have to pay for them to be on your network? I don't know. There's a lot of questions there, but who knows with where that's going. But I like the idea of trying to get that connection and transition or handoff or whatever you want to call it to be a lot more seamless, because I do run into those issues myself, and all I do is when I lose my Wi-Fi, I turn it off, right? So I get on cellular, but the moment I'm in building, connect on Wi-Fi because there's no cellular. So maybe that's the problem that we really should be aiming to provide. But of course, we got companies involved here, so someone's got to make money off of these products. What else are we missing from Mobility Field Day? Because I think there's something from Mist we didn't talk about that I thought was really interesting for a cloud-based company, right? And it had to do with transitioning services from the cloud, or not service. Services, microservices. Yeah. Can you go into that?
Yeah, so they announced a new product called Mist Edge, and which is pretty much deporting some of the microservices inside your network, and they did that, I think, mainly for EDU environment, so you could have you don't have to tunnel all the traffic from your APs to the cloud. You can terminate it locally on a appliance, I guess, or VM. And so you can, that was appealing to some of their customers, right? And so that's what they're calling Mist Edge, is porting some of those microservices to the edge of the network.
So it sounds like a controller is what they're putting on the network. Something where the APs tunnel their traffic to terminate the tunnel, and from there get out to the rest of the network, right? But it's not quite a controller because it's just tunneling the data portion. So you're not managing your Mist APs through the Mist edge. It's just the microservices portion and and having the tunnel termination done at this appliance.
And plus, nowadays, Rowell, in 2019, we don't call it a controller anymore. It's a Docker container.
I totally missed that. Okay, you have a Docker instance, maybe multiple on your edge. But I do see maybe the reasons why this came about, because you have these large layer 2 networks, and having to just all of a sudden cut it over to a different architecture, right, where before you would just tunnel everything to a controller, but with APs that are managed by the cloud, you don't need a tunnel, but you do need to trunk all those VLANs on the edge ports. And so that is a challenge for many organizations who don't want to do that or just not ready to make that transition. And I think the Mist Edge helps create that transition, right? As you slowly try to migrate away from your old architecture to your new, or maybe with new deployments, you don't need the Mist Edge. You just deploy it with a cloud-based management architecture, trunking VLANs to those switch ports, etc., or having these policies placed down at the Mist Edge, and then having it managed there, right? So I would imagine a lot of the policies would probably be managed or pushed to the Mist Edge appliance.
Yeah, I've never used the Mist Edge product, so I don't really know. But yeah, it's I know that they created that product to answer that specific need, right? Some customers, it's just too challenging for them. Like if you have a couple of thousand access points and you have to reconfigure all these ports, like it's not going to be doable, right? They would love to sell you Juniper switches, right, and automate the process, but it's not going to be doable for everyone. So something else I wanted to talk about, because we talked about other vendors, but we didn't talk about the other companies that were not vendors, right? So
Yeah, so there were these secret vendors. Is that what you're referring to? I don't even know if we're allowed to publish these names.
So not. So one of them we're not allowed. So I'm not going to talk about it right now. But we got the NetAli, right? So NetAli is a new company that they started a few months ago, and it's pretty much the new NetScout, right? You know how NetScout got purchased by another company, but they kind of spinned off their line of product that we used to work with, the AirCheck G2 and all of these nice things, and they created that NetAli company. So it's pretty much the same people. So we'll talk about that, and then also MetaGeek, right? MetaGeek came back to Mobility Field Day. I think that was the first time before, since a long time ago, and they came back and presented some of their new stuff. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit. So the NetAli company, so like I said, it's pretty much the same people that we used to, that were working for NetScout, same type of product. But because it's spinned off and it's now like a much smaller company, what they were saying that they're gonna act more as a startup and then have a more entrepreneurial, culture to their business, where they're gonna be able to try new things, be more innovative. So we'll see, how that's gonna play around. That they talked about, the future and what they want to try to accomplish. So they were all about collaborating, right? How can you collaborate using their tools at different levels? How can you collect data on site, collaborate with some people off site? We know they have their Link Live account, and they were presenting some of their product as well. It was actually pretty cool. They also talked about a product that we can't talk about it right now, but we'll be able to talk about later. And it was nice to hear from them. First of all, to get an update on what NetAli is, right? And then also they talked about, you're probably going to ask me the question, they talked about AirMagnet.
Yes.
Yeah, so we all know that AirMagnet didn't really get any refresh since they got purchased by Fluke, and then they got purchased by NetScout, and then who knows what happened. So the CEO actually started the presentation by answering that question. So that was actually very nice from them. So if you watch the video, you're going to see his answer. But if I was to just, summarize what he said that they have different ways they are looking at it, and they have different solutions, alternatives. The first one would be to just recreate a tool from scratch, right? The second one would be to partner up with a company that already has a tool, right? And the third alternative would be to acquire a company that have such a tool and just present that to as a new tool. Yeah.
I think it's great that they brought up Air Magnet because Air Magnet used to be the tool that everyone used, and then Ekahau came along and has pretty much dominated that space in terms of Wi-Fi design, validation, and even troubleshooting now. It's good to see maybe this come back up. I think there were a lot of questions in the past about what's going to happen to Air Magnet. Is it going to go away? Because I haven't really seen anything come out. This hopefully it makes another revival, and we see improvements made. And this is coming at a good time because there's been a lot of comments about Ekahau as well and what's happening there. But I think it's good it's healthy to have this competition because it's going to be better for all of us really. And to have at least one or two vendors at a minimum doing this Wi-Fi design analysis and troubleshooting. It's going to be interesting to see next year if they come back to Mobility Field Day with updates.
That would, very interesting. And then, like you said, it's a healthy, competition we have in the market. And they clearly said that they're not, abandoning the product. So they're gonna be back with something we don't really know. They didn't even know, I think, in what shape or form. But they're thinking about it, and they understand that the market has a need for it. Especially the current customers that keep, they're still paying for support for AirMagnet. And they kind of want to answer, should I keep, paying support, or do I transition to an Ekahau or someone else? So, yeah. So you want to talk about MetaGeek?
Yeah, but before that, I want to see a Mac version of Air Magnet.
You know what I want to see? I want to see a web version of Air Magnet.
That's a good one.
So you don't need a Mac version anymore, right? If you have an HTML5 version, that would be awesome.
All right, so let's finish up by talking about MetaGeek, because I think what we saw from Wi-Fi Trek was pretty good, because they did speak at Wi-Fi Trek. Maybe there's something it sounds like there's a little bit more coming out of Mobility Field Day.
Yeah, so MetaGeek was actually very nice. It wasn't very long; it was 1 hour, but we really felt their company culture. Like a very nice, cool, friendly, family environment. So it was very nice. They definitely brought that to the table, and then they talked about their different tools, right? So they gave us an update on all the different tools they have: Insider, IPA, Channelizer, and then they talked about the fact that they each work in a different silo right now, and they wanted to find a solution to have more collaboration once again in between their tools. And so they're coming up with this new product that they call Rampart, which is pretty much a web interface that can correlate all the information coming from different angles. And then now Insider, they're adding new functionalities, which is actually pretty good, where you could just add different notes, and you could say, okay, here I'm in this building, in that room, and I'm doing a scan, or they call it a snapshot, I believe. And then they do a scan of the RF environment, and then all that data that gets uploaded to the cloud, and you can share that with different team members. You can have different snapshot in time. If you do, before and after analysis, you can actually do packet capture and then replay packet capture Insider. You can do like short-term packet captures. So that was actually pretty good. They demoed a little bit of that, a little bit of their new product, and it was nice to see that they're actually working on different things. They also told us that they're working on Mac products. So they said that they're putting some effort into it. And then what we saw was actually just the beginning of their new product. I think we can expect more features coming from it, and it was actually very, very interesting. I liked it.
I'm looking forward to seeing what MetaGeek comes out with, because I do like that collaboration between applications and being able to correlate a lot of that same data with the same timestamp and being able to easily come out with that root cause analysis, right? Or seeing what exactly is the issue. If you're doing a PCAP with a spectrum analysis, maybe there's something you could correlate there.
I forgot to talk about their new Wi-Fi Y-Air tool or application, where it's like a piece of hardware you can connect to your phone, and then in that piece of hardware you have a spectrum analyzer and you have a Wi-Fi card, and then they have this application that allows you to do some sort of on-site analysis with just your phone or your tablet, and then upload all that data to Rampart as well.
So we will actually do an episode on just that alone, because I do have one of those units that we can play around with it, show people what it looks like and how it could be used, because it is neat to have something just handheld, be able to do some spectrum analysis. Well, to close things out, François, what do you think? Your first time as a delegate, do you think you'd want to come back, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, if they call me, I'll come back for sure. If I'm available, I'll come back for sure. It was a really good experience. It feels like you're not doing much because you're just listening to people and asking questions, but you're mentally drained at the end of the day. And the first day I felt bad. I was like, man, I'm tired. And I talked to the other delegates and everyone was tired. So I was like, okay, it's just not me. So I don't feel that bad, but it's a very good experience. And when you attend those events, it's like 12 people, right? So in the entire industry, so you're like, okay, I'm kind of lucky to be here. So you kind of try to, try to find the best out of it. And so it's very humbling environment. And so if they call me back, I'll definitely go back to it. And then we get to talk about stuff on the podcast too. I'm sure we'll get to interview those people as well and bring you some more content and more deep information about that. And then if you guys want to know more, you can totally go on the Tech Field Day website. If you go to Tech Field Day and then look up for Mobility Field Day 4, and you should find all the videos. I think by now they should all be up online. You can watch them on YouTube, on Vimeo, and you can pretty much rewatch, the whole thing. So you can get as much contact as we did, and you can also go on Twitter and search for the hashtag MFD4 and go back through the conversation that we had during the event.
Awesome. Well, that's our overview recap of Mobility Field Day 4. I still need to catch up with those videos, but it sounds like it was a really good event, and I mean, we're gonna have more episodes just dedicated to each presentation, because we wanted to do a deep dive on those and really talk about some of those features and hardware that came out. And we really look forward to talking about this even more, and hopefully we will get some other people to talk to us, interview for those episodes. But other than that, François, it was great to see you. Glad you're able to come out to my city. Thanks for flying out here. Thanks, Mobility Field Day. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.
See you guys. Thank you.